الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر.
Welcome to Let the Quran Speak. My name is Sophia, I'm your host. The aim of Let the Quran Speak is to help you gain deeper insights into Muslims and Islam, as it is practiced here and in other parts of the world. In this episode, we look at recent Pew research on Muslims. The survey found that Muslims are united in their core beliefs, but have widely differing views about many other aspects of their faith, including how important religion is to their lives, who counts as Muslims, and what practices are acceptable in Islam. We'll be exploring the results of the widespread survey later in the show. But first, does God answer our prayers? Sometimes we pray very hard for God's help, and yet do not receive a satisfying answer. Is God there when we need Him the most? How do we know that God is listening? And what do we do if God does not respond in a way that makes sense to us? With us is Brother Shabir Ali. He's the president of the Islamic Information Center. Brother Shabir, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
Pleasure to be on.
Now, how do you answer this question? Is God listening? And sometimes people go through much difficulty, financial difficulty, relationship difficulty, other difficulties, health difficulties, and they wonder if they can rely on God.
The assurance that we have in the Quran actually is that God does listen to our prayers. He does hear us and He's aware of all of our needs. And yes, that we can and should rely on God. Relying on God, having tawakkul, as we say in Arabic, is one of the salient characteristics of Muslims. This is how they're described. The believers will put their trust in God.
Mm-hmm. Whatever the circumstance, good or bad.
Yes.
Is there any particular verse that you can point to show this?
Yes, in terms of answering prayers,
Yes,
in the second chapter of the Quran, in verse 186, it is mentioned, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. When my servants ask you about me, tell them I am near. أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِي إِذَا دَعَانِ. I answer the dua or the supplication of one who makes the supplication whenever they make that supplication. فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي وَلْيُؤْمِنُوا بِي لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ. So let them believe in me and respond to me so that they may be rightly guided.
Mm-hmm. Now, what would you say to an individual who prays and prays and prays and doesn't seem to get any sort of response?
Well, the Quran does say, seek the help of God in patience and prayer. And it further says that if you ask me, I will answer your prayer.
Does it suggest a person is not asking in the right way, perhaps, or does not have the right mindset? What is going on there?
Well, I don't want to go there yet. Let me just start by acknowledging that sometimes it would seem that despite our most fervent and sincere prayers, God doesn't do what we are asking for. So what seems to be the problem here? It could be that which you're suggesting in your question, but before I go there and start making people feel that we're not worthy and we're not doing a thing that's the right way, I want to speak about limitations coming from the other side. Now,
okay.
we do know that God is all powerful and He's able to do whatever He decides, and this is the faith of believers. At the same time, Muslim scholars have said that you should not imagine that God will do something that is logically impossible. Because if something is logically impossible, it's absurd to say that this will be done, whether you're speaking of God doing it or anyone else doing it. You're just speaking about something logically impossible. Like, let's say, for example, somebody asks, could God create a triangle with 4 sides? Mm-hmm. Well, the answer to that is that within our worldview, what we know to be triangles, the question is absurd. Because if it had more than 3 sides, it wouldn't be a triangle. It will be something else, a quadrilateral or whatever, mm-hmm. A pentagon or some other shape, but not a triangle. To be a triangle, it has to have 3 sides. So you can't assert that God did something that is logically impossible, or can do or will do something that is logically impossible. sometimes what we're asking for, we don't see the impossibility in it, but we must realize that God has a tremendous juggling act to perform. Because imagine that there are 6 billion people or 7 billion people all over the world, each asking God for something, and their requests are contradictory. Somebody saying, God, please let it not rain today because we have this important picnic to attend. And somebody else is saying, please God, give us some rain because we need our crops to be farmed. So these are two contradictory sorts of requests, and you might say, well, why doesn't God just simply let it rain on the farm and not elsewhere? Well, then in that case you would have the universe operating on different principles. It's no longer principles that we can measure scientifically, and that we're no longer going to be in a position to predict rain, for example. So we're no longer in control of our affairs in the way that we're learning to control them. A lot of times we'd like to have more control, but if God deals with us in the way that things normally happen as they are now, then we can start to measure and predict things. But if things are just arbitrarily done by God, one moment it's raining on this farm, the other moment it's raining on the picnic, and so on, well then we can no longer predict, and we can no longer measure, we can no longer study science, we can no longer become the intelligent human beings that we are.
How about unusual occurrences though? Like, for example, recent hurricanes. What about that? Can't we pray to God and ask God to alleviate our suffering from these hurricanes?
Yes, we can. We should pray to God and ask Him to do that. Whether God will do that or not, this is a different issue. Sometimes for God to do this may mean altering the basic laws that govern the operation of such things. And if God may find it not beneficial in the long run to change these laws and to alter the ways in which things normally happen. And so what God may do is give us a spirit, a sense that will help us to overcome the situation. God may inspire people to be more charitable so that those who are suffering from the effects of a hurricane can get the charitable help, and their suffering may be alleviated. One of the things that prayer does for us is that when we're asking God for something, like we say, God, please, I really want this job, bring it my way. Well then, that in a way is a commitment. You see, a lot of times people have hopes and dreams and aspirations, but they don't put it in writing, and so there's no commitment between them and the dream. Somebody says, I want to be a millionaire. Well, if you want to be a millionaire, then I'm not recommending this as a good ambition, but if somebody wants to have that as a goal, to achieve that goal, first of all, write it down. So it becomes something concrete. It's not something just wishful thinking. Yeah, I'd like to be a millionaire, but I want to be a millionaire. That is my defined goal. And then the next thing you have to write down is, what do I need to do to get there? So now it's not just some wishy-washy hope. It is something concrete, and you genuinely want to do that, and you're going to take the steps to get there. Well, in a way, prayer is like writing it down. Because when you have an idea, once you have told somebody about it, now it becomes a commitment between you and this person. In a way, like you're committed to it because you've told somebody, as opposed to just simply having it in mind. When you tell God, you are making a commitment with God in a way, because it'll be very silly for you to be asking God, God, please give me this job, and then you're not even going to apply for the job. So if you really want that job, now you make a prayer to God, God, please give me this job. Now you're making a commitment between you and God, this is what you really want. This is concrete now, it's almost like writing it down. Now the next thing you need to do is you need to apply for the job. And if it requires some sort of qualifications, if it requires doing some research, some background study on the company you're applying with, to show that you really know what this job is about, what the company is about, you really are interested in working there, and so on. So all of this follow from the prayer itself.
Yes, but there are some things that we pray for that are within our control, but there are other things that people pray for that is outside their control. So for example, sickness, death, a loss, something like this, that an individual prays for that they really have no power over within their own lives.
True, but even then it gives us the sense that now we have put things in the hands of one who has the power to take care of things, and God will do what is best in this situation. I've already asked God, so there's nothing more I can do now. The one last thing I could have done was to ask God and put it in His care. And now God will do that which is the best in His wisdom. And what God is going to do is not necessarily what we are asking for precisely. Now, in this regard, a hadith says that when a believer prays to God for something, the prayer may be answered in one of three ways. One way is that God gives precisely what the believer is asking for, and that's what we all would expect and we'll be happy with, right? Second, it may be that what the believer is asking for is not actually beneficial, even though we think that it's beneficial, but in the long run it may not be. Somebody says, God, give me this car, I really want it. But how do you know that that very car may be the cause of your death? So maybe God doesn't give you that, but according to the hadith, God stores up for you a reward in the life hereafter, rather than giving you precisely what you asked for. So your prayer is still answered and still beneficial, but the benefit of that you will see in the life hereafter, rather than getting this specific thing which you are asking for. As somebody wrote a book with the title saying, be careful what you ask for because you just might get it. So sometimes we ask for things which according to the Quran are bad for us, but we don't know that they're bad. God gives us a good instead. Now, a third way in which the prayer is answered according to the hadith is that God removes a calamity from our path, which had we known about, we would be asking for that instead. We'd be asking for the calamity to be removed. So, you might be sitting around and you're thinking, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have that thing? So it's something that's luxurious. You don't really have it yet and you're doing fine without it. So would you rather have that thing, or would you rather a calamity be removed from your path? Now, if the calamity was known to you, that is the thing that would occupy your keep you up at night, and that's what you'd be asking God to do, remove that calamity from my path. But you didn't ask for that because you didn't know, and God in His mercy has actually removed that from us without our knowing about it. And so a lot of our prayers are being answered by God removing calamities, further distress, sickness, and so on from our way. And we don't see that happening, but that is actually happening according to this hadith.
All right, we'll have to leave it at that. Much more we could discuss, but we're running out of time. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
We'll take a break. When we return, we'll look at some research on Muslims worldwide.